We were just talking outside about the guys, your Melbourne human beings, the Bondi Sands people. You know the Bondi Sands story, did you see that? Just bought out by a Japanese company for $27 billion. Two guys, I went and saw a girlfriend of mine who lives here in Melbourne, and they're in Port Melbourne, and we walked past this gym and she goes, oh my God, do you remember Pascal, to her husband, the two guys that ran their gym, they're the ones that did that Bondi Sands. I've gone, what? And he's turned around and goes, God, yeah. He said, if they could do that, what were we thinking about? We could have, you know, apparently these two guys, they weren't particularly complimentary. $27 billion, Bondi Sands is a self-tanning lotion. So I've got 4 kids and 3 of them are blondies and they use this self-tanning lotion religiously. So they've grown into a $27 billion company, just sold it out. How impressive would that be? Are you looking at me quizzically? Or did you ever invest in? No, sad. You could invest in someone here today. That could be your moment. That could be your 100 bagger, who knows? All right, who's new? Who's only just arrived? Has anyone just arrived in typical beautiful Melbourne fashion, stylishly late? Missed some really great presentation this morning. I will say there were some absolute pearlers in there amongst us. But you can always go back onto our website and you can find the link through. And actually the little programs that you've got in front of you, just for a change this year, what we've done is we've got the QR code, very technically advanced of us. So you can hover your phone over that as well and use a link there to the company and you'll be able to see the presentation when it's put up on their page. Right, the sound is dying down. Did you get a pie? Or did you get a pie just then? Is that a pie? Good, because I'd be really disappointed. I missed out on the pies. Who else had a pie? So this is all about me just for a second. Shane, I got outside and all I was left with was chocolate croissants, which I was kind of pleased with, but I was also sad about as well. So a couple of interesting things to find out as I walked out outside. Do you know that there's a maternity wing in this? Yeah. So if you see people walking around with babies in prams, etc., there's actually a whole floor here that's dedicated to maternity at the Hyatt. There you go. And I don't know if that's changed your life, but it's certainly interested me. It might change your life as much as the opportunity to invest in the next company. So I'm going to ask you a question. Has anyone in this house, anyone in this room ever built a home before? Have you gone through the process of building a home? Yes? Was said home delivered on time? No, possibly not. And then you get a spare thought for the poor old builders. Is anyone in the room an ex-builder? Any ex-builders in the room? So you know how hard it is to get a hold of tradies even years ago. Now it's even harder. And bricklayers are one of the hardest ones to get a hold of. So the biggest problem around Australia then facing the building industry is construction labour. So our next presentation is aiming to solve that issue and build your investment account. So let's welcome FBR CEO and MD, Mike Pivac.
Thanks for the intro, Chrissy, and very nice to be here with everybody. I think because I'm first up after morning tea, Chrissy's actually going to give me a bit more time as well. So it's very, very kind of her to have offered that before we started. All right. So, as mentioned, my name is Mike Pivac. I am the CEO, MD, and co-founder of FBR. FBR was formerly Fast Brick Robotics, and we did the name change a few years ago because we wanted people to recognise our company as more than just a robotic bricklaying company. The technology that sits behind this machine, something we call DST, or Dynamic Stabilisation Technology, will enable us to produce machines that will do a whole range of other functions in the construction industry, but more importantly, in the outdoor robotic space. So you don't see a lot of robots operating outside at the moment, and there's a very good reason for that. And that is because robots traditionally operate in factories. They're bolted to a factory floor. They're programmed to do a specific function, many times, very fast, and it has completely changed our lives over the last 30 or 40 years. If it wasn't for in-factory robotics, most of the things that are in your pockets, your electronic devices, your computers, your cars, and all the other things that make our lives better and easier simply would not have been possible. So the most amazing thing about our company is that we are the first people in the world to take robots outside. And that's because we can account for and correct for, in real time, the dynamic interferences that you get outside. So you get wind, you get rain, you get inertias from letting go big heavy things over big broad workspaces. And all that means that there's a big bunch of movement going on in that robot, which has to be accounted for. Has to be measured better than 1,000 times a second and corrected for better than 1,000 times a second. And we are the only company in the world that do it. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about our company. I'll run through some slides and I'm going to show you a little bit of a video. And unfortunately, we don't get a Q&A session here, which I always like to do, but I'll do my best in giving you as much information as possible. So it is a unique value proposition that we have with our most advanced dynamically stabilised construction robot in the world. This is a fully highway capable construction robot that can build an entire house structure from the one position, from the road verge, without needing to move, without a single human needing to touch a brick, without exposing anybody to the dangers of silica dust. No one lifts any heavy things, no wheelbarrows, no shovels, no trowels. We're in the process at the moment of training our first woman to take one of these machines to a construction site and build a home. The first female robotic bricklayer. Yeah, it is a good idea. On a number of levels, it's a good idea. Chrissy's already asked me if she can have a job with us, and I'm working on that with her. But from an ESG perspective, folks, one of the things in ESG is about diversity. And in construction, we don't see a lot of women in the industry, okay? So our contribution to that is having a machine that a woman can take to site and build a house with. They don't have to push a wheelbarrow or swing a shovel or a trowel. This is construction of the future. I want to show you how we do it. So just in essence, this machine here that you see is our new model, the Hadrian 110. It is much more advanced than the current model that we are using in Perth today. So we've built about 32 structures in Western Australia. We started sort of 3 or 4 months after COVID hit. We've built daycare centres, commercial centres, residential homes, and I'll show you a movie of a multi-unit, high-density, high-rise or multi-level site that we have going on in Willagee, Western Australia, for WA's largest property developer. We have a significant first mover technology advantage, obviously. This machine will drive the price of load-bearing, non-cosmetic wall down potentially by 70%. And we're about to prove that commercially to the world very soon. We're taking the machine from the indoor environment, indoor testing and commissioning environment. It's about to move outside to our test slab in the coming days, not weeks or months, but in the coming days. And really importantly, we just received funding to produce 3 of these on United States truck bases. So Mack TerraPros, 3 of them coming to Australia, 3 Hadrian machines about to be fitted to them and shipped to Florida for FBR to set up its first United States beachhead sometime in the next 6 months. So a very significant point in time for the company commercially. The diversity and the versatility of this machine has stunned a lot of people in the construction industry. Just pointing to the image on the bottom of the screen there, that particular house structure can now be built in a day. That one there was built without producing a single kilo of masonry waste on site. Why? How? Because before we go to site and build that structure, we know exactly how many bricks are in it. We know exactly how many are cut. We know exactly how much waste we're going to produce with that design. We know exactly how long it's going to take, and therefore we know exactly how much it's going to cost. And we can actually give that builder the data that he needs to lock in and program that build 6 or 12 months in advance without being concerned about there being a change in the price or the quote of doing that job. So one of the major problems the industry has at the moment, and you're seeing it in the papers every day, people are not getting their homes built right now because the builder had to lock themselves into a contract 2 years ago, and now the price of labour and the price of materials has changed, and therefore people are waiting for their homes, they're couch surfing. There's a lot of disruption going on, and if you didn't know, building a home, I think, is the second or third most stressful thing people do in their lives. And the reason for that is you very rarely get your keys when the builder said you were going to get them. Now, that's not a fault of the builders, it is just a fact of the industry, the way it works, okay? It's very hard to nail down time and cost in construction, but we're doing our bit to change that. The top image that you see there is part of the Willagee site that we're building at the moment. Now those walls there, that's the second story you see there. They are triple leaf separation walls. They are 14 metres in height. As you can see, there's no scaffold. What you see there inside are the timber frames already being fitted to the site while the robot is continuing to build. There are no people working at heights, no one lifting heavy things. So our site safety component is very, very high. So speed and accuracy are very important, but so is safety and waste reduction. And they are the four things that our company has focused on for the last 7 years. We are compliant for building in Australia, and we've recently received ICC approval and also Florida state approval for our machine and our wall system. And very importantly, you're going to see some footage and people are going to say, where's the mortar? Well, we don't use wet mortar anymore. We now use construction adhesives, and it gives us some very distinct advantages. One is, it's about 5 times stronger and about 1/5 the price. But really importantly, we don't have to stop. We don't have to wait for things to set before we can continue to build up. We have no limit on how high we can build vertically in a day, which means we can complete structures in 1 day. And this is a game changer for the industry. This is the south wing that you see here operating now. There's a north wing, there's 8 units on each of these sites, as you can see there. You can see the Hadrian robot doing its thing. Like I said, triple leaf separation walls. There's insulation and sort of fire resistant materials that goes down between those cavities. Also all your MEPs, your mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all goes up through the cavities or down through the actual cavities within the brick itself. The machine receives a digital program, an email of what it needs to build. The machine gets loaded in the back with pallets of bricks that come straight from the factory, and the machine does everything else. It knows the exact position of every brick. It knows whether it needs to be cut, what size it needs to be, and delivered it in the exact right sequence for the build. You'll notice here that there are perp gaps open in the build, and we do that purposefully because those particular walls are going to have a wet mortar material on the outside, like a stucco material, and a wet plaster type material on the inside, and those gaps help a lot with making sure those materials stick nicely to the walls. We also do with clay blocks and other CMU blocks where we close those perps up for other markets around the world. So that's just unique to this particular build. So this is WA, Willagee, WA's largest property developer working with us on this site, and from here we move to another 8-unit high-rise or multi-level development site from Willagee. So you can see the versatility of the machine. So just jumping back again to environment and health and safety, our aim is to reduce construction waste on site down to 0, and we've demonstrated how we can do that. 10% of all bricks and blocks that are produced around the world today end up in landfill. And that's because traditional manual bricklayers need to order more than is required because they don't actually know how many they're going to have to break or cut or waste. We do. So therefore, we can eliminate about 10% of the cost of the materials going into those walls. And from a health and safety perspective, as I mentioned, no one lifting heavy things, no repetitive strain injuries, no exposure to dangerous chemicals or dust, and therefore we think we'll hopefully enable the building industry to keep considering bricks and blocks as a major building material into the future, because that is currently at risk. So what's happened in recent years is we've seen a continual and concerning decline in the amount of bricklayers around the world. This is not a 21st century career choice for school leavers. If your kids or your grandkids are coming home and saying, I know what I want to do, I want to be a bricklayer, you should sit them down, okay? You'd have to ask the question as to why you chose that as a career choice. But if they came home and said, I've seen this amazing bit of tech, there's a new machine around that I can drive the same way that I play my PlayStation at home, then you'd understand why they might want to go into construction. And this we have seen with the young people that we're employing and the young people we're helping to educate and train in the construction world, being able to use machinery like this without having to go through the usual dull, dirty and dangerous type processes is starting to become very attractive to school leavers again. So we think this is going to really catch on with the young folks. So instead of using a wheelbarrow or a trowel or a shovel, we now use an iPad. We drive the robot to site. We email what it's going to build to the machine while it's en route to the site. If you want to change the design of what you're going to build while the machine's en route to the site, do so. Because the moment it gets there and it accepts that program, and that is what you want to build, that is what you were going to get. The machine has a 32-metre long telescopic boom. That's a 100-foot workspace. This boom slews across the workspace, it telescopes and traverses, and the whole time it continues to lay blocks around about one every 9 to 10 seconds. That means we can produce a square metre of load-bearing wall around about every 80 seconds. Now in Australia, that's around about $100. In the US, it's basically double that at the moment. Now, if you can do that amount of wall in an hour or in a day, it means you can drive the cost down significantly. And this is important for builders, it's important for home buyers and customers, okay? But really importantly, it's going to allow us to speed up the way that we build, take builders to the lock-up stage maybe 2 months earlier than traditionally they can at the moment, which frees up a lot of cash flow. But it also helps us address this housing shortage that we see around the world, which if you weren't aware, if you think we've got a problem right now, in the next 40 years, there are 2.5 billion more people coming on this planet. And we have got no idea at this point in time how we're going to house everybody. Are you standing up because I've only got no time left? We've got Liebherr working with us in Europe to modularize the design of the machine so it can be manufactured, mass manufactured very quickly and more efficiently. We are doing lots of those things. Sorry, Chris, I can feel you burning away in the back of my mind there. Where are we going? Here we go. And look, who's that? What, ask me questions? No, after. Oh, okay, after. Damn it. All right. So anyway, look, very quickly, in parallel, we've developed a machine that does this, but we've also developed the software program for builders and designers to use. It's a web-based portal. You simply click and drag the design of what you want to build into our software, and within a matter of minutes, it produces the design program for the machine. All happens very quickly, enables builders to understand the cost of building a house, the time it's going to take, lock in the price, and therefore build things faster, cheaper and better. Thank you.
John, good man, right on. I've seen an MC at another conference and he's actually got a shepherd's crook apparently that he pushes people off the stage with. I'm thinking, you're testing, I'm going to build a bigger robotic arm. I can get a robotic arm that just goes, you've taken the time. While you were speaking though there, and I was listening, because I'm a woman and I can do two things at once, that's how our brains work. I know. Hey, I did happen to see this fellow who's in front of me walk into the room. Now, at the start of the day, you heard me all talk about a little company called ResApp, yes? Well, this is ResApp royalty here. This is Mr. Brian. He was the man in charge of taking the concept and bringing it to us, and he brought it to us at one of these conferences. So I'm going to let him introduce our next speaker. So on your card in front of you, you will see we've got Respiri coming up. Yes? I'm going to hand it over to Brian. Would you make him very welcome, everyone, please?
I'm going to talk right from here then. Thank you, Chrissy. So I'm going to introduce Nicholas, the chairman of Respiri, but just a reason why I joined the board of Respiri, because it's a digital healthcare company and it's very similar to the company that I founded in ResApp Health, which I remember presenting up on this stage. It was back in 2015 when it first listed, and it was a very exciting journey, and it ultimately led to Pfizer acquiring the company wholly, which is the first time that Pfizer's ever bought an Australian healthcare company. And they bought it for $180 million, and the shareholders did extremely well. But there's one thing that ResApp Health, which just to refresh for those who don't remember it perhaps, it used signatures and the sound of a cough to diagnose respiratory disease on a smartphone, which is a pretty interesting concept. And it ended up working, which is the reason why Pfizer bought it. And everyone here, well, this was here 5 years ago, they could have bought shares in that. No, okay, fine. It did well. So, Respiri is a company that's very similar in that space as a digital healthcare company. It's to do with asthma. But they've achieved something that ResApp failed to do, which is ResApp never got FDA approval. And FDA approval is what you need in this healthcare game, because it gives you the market opportunity to go and make lots of money in the biggest commercial market there is in the US. And so Respiri has achieved that. They're actually now going through that commercialization. And Nicholas is going to tell you a lot more about it. So please make him welcome.
Thank you very much. Do we have the presentation? There we go. Lovely. Well, thank you for that introduction, Brian. My name's Nicholas Smedley. I have the pleasure of being the Executive Chairman of Respiri, and here to tell you a little bit more about where we're up to and the exciting journey over the coming months and years of where our product in the US will be rolling out. Just a couple of big backgrounds on the company. We have myself as chair, Brian is the latest addition to the board as a non-executive director. He's joined us in the last month or so. We have Brad Snow, who's US expertise, has been on a little over a year now, and has helped set up our fantastic medical advisory board. And Martin McKell, who would normally be doing this presentation, is currently in the US, hopefully closing a number of more key customer contracts that we should be able to announce in not too distant future, on top of the 13 existing customers we have in the US. Share price at the moment is approximately 4 cents, a market cap of $36 million. You'll see there the cash number there is pre the SPP, which closes today. The SPP and shortfall will be fully subscribed, so that adds $3 million of cash to our position. The opportunity that we have in front of us is the traditional model of healthcare in the US is reactive, and it's failing patients as it stands at the moment. The cycle of readmission rates from hospitals is ever increasing, and the biggest issues that hospitals and large healthcare organisations are facing at the moment is readmission targets have now been legislated. So if you don't meet your readmission rates for either 30 or 60 days, you as an institution are now fined by CMS, and those fines are significant. I'll give a little bit of a case example later on in relation to Arkansas Heart. The opportunity for us with our primary device, Wheezo, is an addressable market in the US of 50 million patients. And I'll talk through quickly an acquisition in a few slides' time that enables to move that addressable market up to 150 million. The biggest way for us to improve and rectify the US health system is remote patient monitoring, which helps institutions continue care outside the clinic in a much lower cost environment. And Respiri has partnered with a number of firms in that space, but we've just announced to the market the acquisition of Access Telehealth, which enables us to completely in-house the RPM process, which I'll talk about shortly. The most important thing, though, is customers want everything to remain status quo. Patients want to have an easy process where data is automatically transferred and their normal daily lives are barely impacted by the monitoring that they need to do. Most importantly, providers, i.e. doctors and hospitals, like to remain doctors and hospitals. They don't want to be doing investment in new people, new processes, and the beauty of RPM in the US is it can be completely outsourced at no cost to the hospital, and we are that outsourced partner. And then for insurers and payers, they again are wanting to reduce the cost of hospitalizations via monitoring, and again, they're not wanting to invest themselves in anything new. They're wanting third parties to take that risk and provide those services for them, and that is what Respiri is positioned to be able to do. You need something that's simple. So our leading device, which is Wheezo, it takes 30 seconds of breath sound just to monitor wheeze rate for patients. We're the only product in the market that enables it to be done. We then have clinician staff that analyse that data and on an exceptions basis, send that through to doctors for further reviews. So most importantly, a doctor is not getting inundated by all of these recordings that have been done out of the hospital. They get an exceptions report where there are high risk or changes on particular patients that they must act on. And that's the only the only added daily process that the doctors get. So it's nice and simple for them. Most importantly though as well, Respiri's done a number of firsts. We were the first FDA cleared wheeze detector in the US market. We were the first to deliver end-to-end RPM solutions to the US. And we're the first that we're aware of to be successfully reimbursed for RPM for an Australian company in the US as well. So everything that I'm talking about to you today is not a future ambition. We have done it, we have delivered it, we have patients, and we're generating revenue. So I think that's very, very important. And most importantly, as I said earlier, the problem is not just respiratory. We use Wheezo though as a great beachhead to sign up large organisations because there is no other respiratory solution. But there is also RPM solutions required for obesity, for diabetes, for cardiovascular. And the acquisition of Access Telehealth has enabled us to move into all of those disease states. So that means, as you can see up there, more than 60% of citizens in the US over 55 are with 2 or more comorbidities. So we can now be across all disease states in remote patient monitoring. The example that I spoke about earlier, Arkansas Heart, and this is the genesis for us wanting to acquire our partner Access Telehealth. We went in there, they were being fined heavily by CMS. They were losing 10% of their bottom line to fines when we told them we would be able to help them save that entire fine base under a risk share model. Within 2 weeks, they had signed a new agreement with us to be their RPM provider. The issue was though, they're a heart hospital. Not all of them had respiratory comorbidities. So where it wasn't a Wheezo related RPM process, we had to give those patients to our partner. So while we were getting the business, we were having to outsource part of that to someone else and losing that revenue. By acquiring Access, which we've announced to the market and we settle on next week, we get to capture all of that revenue ourselves. And the benefit we also get from that is, at the moment, Wheezo receives between $10 and $20 US per patient per month for providing its services. Under the new model that we've got with the acquisition of Access RPM, that revenue increases more than 7 times. So per patient per month, by providing the full RPM solution, we're able to bill $70 to $100 US per patient per month. So a significant uplift for us in revenues, which does 2 things for us. One, it drives down the number of patients we need for break even. We were requiring approximately 30,000 patients to break even. We now only need a little over 9,000. But we also then can address every disease state, not just respiratory and asthma and COPD. So this is fantastic for us. As it stands, we're being able to acquire patients in cardiovascular, diabetes and obesity, as I previously stated. This is one of the most exciting elements for our business at the moment. This is the map of our current current customers and our near-term pipeline of potential customers. So as you can see in there at the moment, we currently have 8 states where we are currently working, and Wheezo is a lead device in hospitals. The acquisition of Access Telehealth puts this in another 9 states. And then we have potential for, as you can see in there, the light blue, which is another 7 states that we're hoping to be announcing in the near term from our development pipeline of new leads. So just leaving you with a couple of key points as to why the benefit we have is significant revenue upside from this acquisition for us. Our break-even point has reduced significantly from 30,000 patients to 9,000 patients, which makes our break-even point now forecast to be the second half of 2024. We have 7 to 10 times revenue growth. We have multiple addressable markets now, not just respiratory. We have every disease state, so we go from 50 million potential patients to an addressable market in the US of 150 million. And most importantly, and the final point I'll leave you with, our CEO, Martin McKell, has done this all before. He was the founder and CEO of Healthy Sleep Solutions, which was a sleep apnea business in Australia. He grew that from 0 to the largest patient monitoring business in Australia, and we're doing exactly the same process again in the US with our RPM program. So we've got the right management team delivering. Thank you very much, everyone.
You just walked in the room up the back there. I was just going to make a comparison. Now I'll have to be very, very quiet. But did you see that man there? He was to the second. He was absolutely amazing. That's what happens though when you wear a tie. Just lifts your game just that little bit. Not really. Doesn't matter. As long as your product is good, we are interested. Now we're going to go and do a little bit of flying. We're going into the drone world now for our next 2 presentations. And I've got a mate, when we were in grade 7, we didn't even know what a drone was. Actually, we didn't really know what drones were to about 15 years ago. His job now, he is the head drone operator for Gina Reinhardt. So she'll ring him up and say, I want to have a look at my cattle, or I want to have a look at my such and such. And he automatically brings these drones up and off they fly and they do their thing. Yeah. This man here, Christopher, is going to give us an opportunity to look at a bit of Australian grown, just say hardware and AI, because you've got a bit of mix of everything, haven't you? I'll let you introduce. He's got 15 minutes, take 15 and a half, okay? Cheers. Would you please make Christopher very welcome, everyone? This is RocketDNA.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for the intro. I'm very excited to tell you about a little business which we call RocketDNA, ticket code RKT. This is a company I started over 12 years ago out in Africa, and have now brought it to Australia. We've relisted the business about sort of 2.5 years ago. And what's really exciting about this business, which I like to kind of position as the near map of the drone world, is that we, in contrast to satellites and manned aircraft, have on a really unique position in using drones to really solve problems in sort of very fast changing environments that require high resolution and high frequency of data. And I'll sort of explain a little bit more. Some of the key highlights of what we've been able to achieve over the last key sort of 3 years is a really high certification in safety, and this is primarily targeted towards our main revenue drivers within the mining industry, as well as getting really so intricate government approvals around beyond visual line of sight and remote operations. These are things that separate us from any other kind of drone company. And what's really exciting is with the advent of AI and AI tools, which we've actually been using for a number of years, you're able to take this large generation of drone data, which is being collected on a very frequent basis, and able to provide very quick and fast turnaround of that data and insights to allow the decision makers on those mine sites to highlight and pinpoint exactly where the problems may lie. So a quick sort of a snapshot of our business, and maybe probably the very first thing that really makes us unique as a company is that we're highly contract and revenue driven in signing up long-term multi-year contracts with tier 1 and tier 2 customers. You're not going to find any other kind of drone companies listed that have got this sort of longevity and guaranteed revenue streams coming in. Last year we just did short of $6 million in revenue, and we got a market cap of just north of 5 million, zero debt on the books, and about 2.5 million in cash. We really got I'll show you a couple of slides. We're really controlling the cash burn rate. It's pretty negligible at this point, so we're able to really drag out sort of the operations as long as we need. But saying that, though, we are a growth-based business. So again, to have a look, we sort of summarized into our annual recurring revenue of 2.6 million, with a total contract value of 4.3 million. We have recently signed a deal with South32, 5-year deal, $1 million. That's bumped up that annual recurring revenue number to just short of $3 million in ARR, and over 5.5 million in total contract value. So our customer base is pretty diverse, very concentrated within the mining industry, and this is where we found a lot of success in signing up these long-term deals. So we'd be going to site, generally sort of providing ad hoc services, and then so you convert those customers into long-term customers, because they've got an end of sight of how long the mine site may last, and we're just become really part and parcel of what the mines do. They need to know how much they're digging out of the ground. They need to be identifying risks within their operations, and we help optimize a lot of what they're doing, as well as making workers safer by removing them out of these dangerous operating areas. Our business model is based on these 4 pillars. It all begins, it's pretty well diversified and very well sort of set. That makes us very sticky. We go all the way from the data capture, being knowing the right mix of hardware and software, and especially bringing in that licensing. That's a really big component of what we do and how we do it. That separates us from any other sort of drone companies that you know. And we take this all the way through to, again, solving a customer's particular problem. What makes drones unique, again, in terms of satellites and manned aircraft, is that you can fly under the clouds. You can fly every single day. Satellites only come over once a month. Manned aircraft only come over once a month. And they're satellites once a week, and generally manned aircraft once a month. And they're very expensive to deploy and operate. Where drones have really got to really a really cost efficient in terms of per megabyte of data captured, you're able to really focus on critical assets or critical problems, such as water leaks, corrosion detection. Generally, a lot of it, what we do is stockpile or volumetric calculations, things that are essential to the mines and our customers on a daily basis. So really, we sort of quite a sticky component of once we're in, we're set in, and we get these long-term deals. Our value drivers at the bottom speak to a lot about what makes what we've sort of built up in terms of our capacity and capabilities over the years. A year ago, we were known as DLT, as Delta Drone, and we took the opportunity to rebrand the company as RocketDNA to really highlight the focus in our businesses, automating a lot of what we do. It has been predominantly, legacy of our business has been using drones to manually capture data, and now we're starting to transition the business into automated data capture as well, and then complementing that with AI tools that can process and provide insights within days compared to weeks in what the customers are getting on a manual basis. A couple of the highlights on the financial level. The last quarter was really kind of sort of rounds out what the legacy part of our business has been about. Really adding on that South32 deal, really showing the scalability within our business model, and understanding that while we're really good at managing the cash and achieving a sort of a low burn rate, we understand that we want to use this opportunity, especially with where we're seeing the mining market and productivity in general, to leverage that to offer these automation solutions. We're really focused on being on cash flow break even. That's definitely on our horizon as well, but then balancing that with the opportunities. As mentioned, we added the South32 deal, and continue to build on this recurring revenue stream of our business. 2/3 of our revenue comes out of Africa, which has got a growing proportion in not only just the mining, but a lot of security related drone operations there as well. And it really helps diversify the business in terms of the risks. So you're never going to see really lots of peaks and valleys in our revenue as we're adding on these contracts, on these projects. It's a real steady uptick in the business. So it really says something for us being around for over a decade. We've been pretty reliable and again, pretty consistent on adding on those contracts. So what we do is we generally go into a customer, we sort of get a shoe in, either doing maybe a small sort of AI project or POC, or bringing a bit of automation to the customer. And then it's really about landing and expanding on that customer and that deal. And that's how we sort of just build that trust and build that consistency, and be very modular in our approach. We don't just only have one size fits all. We're able to customize a very sort of 10 to 20% of our solutions, but understanding that other 80% is what we use to scale and build efficiencies in our offering. Something you're not going to see out of a lot of sort of revenue companies like us, so being very contract driven, sort of being as reliable as houses here, is when we're talking about our ARR of 3 million and our TCV of 5.5 million, I'm only talking about that bottom half, as sort of what I refer to as my hamburger graph over here. When you look at that yellow section at the bottom, that 3 million of annual recurring revenue is only reflecting that 42% of our actual overall revenue. So we still got another 60% of revenue still on top of the business. And the reason why we sort of put that hamburger patty section in the middle there on the green section to highlight is that we've got customers that have been with us for longer than a year. We don't have a formal long-term commitment with them, but they've been with us giving sort of month to month or every 3 months sort of a purchase order, and they've been with us for longer than 12 months. And we view these customers as sort of transitionary from the POCs to building that trust to really getting embedded. And it's really kind of that step process. A lot of you who sort of worked in the mining industry understand it just takes a little bit of time, but once you're in, then the final sort of sales strategy is then to convert them to that longer term deal. This particular slide just indicates our great sort of work and trajectory in managing the net cash and our operating activities. So really sort of improved over the last quarter, and yeah, we're really happy with the trajectory in which we're taking the business. So again, sort of to highlight, 2.5 million in the bank, 6 million revenue business, and really getting to that zero sort of net cash operating line there. So where do we see this business growing? Where's the growth going to come from? Where do we get quite excited? Well, according to the ABS, mining is an industry that's really in a productivity crisis. It's an industry that's had a sort of a lack, especially in other than sort of critical minerals, a lack of investment, high input labor costs, lowering grades and yields that are coming out of mining. And the only thing that's going to solve this is technology. Sort of as our colleague sort of shown you in automation, it's a really easy sell to bring in, especially into the mining industries as they look to automate a lot of the operations. We're seeing a lot of tailwinds and customer acceptance in saying, well, we're struggling to bring young people onto mine sites. We can't get them out there. And they're starting to supplement that now or replace a lot of that with technology. So how we're catering towards this demand is within our two growth sectors, which is continued use of our AI operating tools. And I'll show you a couple of examples of what we do and what we produce for our customers using AI. But this is complemented with our autonomous and automated drone solutions. So we've put together essentially like a drone in a box, which you're able to put out at a mine site or along pipelines, transmission lines, next to substations, any kind of critical asset. Some sort of proposals we work on is you've got 20 kilometers of potable water in this really aging infrastructure that's leaking. And right now they put someone in a ute, they're paying them 12 grand a month to drive up and down 20 kilometers looking for water leaks. That's what's happening today. So we're really addressing that by bringing in this automation, putting these drone units out there, combined with satellite technology. You can place them out anywhere, and we can fly and cover with a single unit 10 kilometers sort of straight line with the drone in the middle. So, and with this, there's an onboard thermal sensor. We're able to pick up leaks, heat stress, and lots of other sort of acid failures that are coming that we sort of are physically able to and visually identify. Then complementary that with the AI and object detection tools, we're able to then highlight very quickly where the pain points are, where the problems are, so that we can send the construction or repair or maintenance crews straight away. A brief sort of highlight of some of the modules in which we deploy within a mining environment to really help our customers optimize using their drone data. And at a baseline level, this will even start off from automated inventory tracking. So as you're mining and producing and putting these stockpiles, we're flying and capturing and modeling and then automatically reporting within a dashboard the volumetrics for the customers. We're providing a high wall safety analysis. So you're looking here, you want to essentially remove people from the base of the pit because you're always worried about rock falls and landslides that are occurring. And we're able to monitor how well you're doing in terms of your performance and compared to your mine design, to what the as-built is. We're using AI for drill and blast and fragmentation. Essentially, even before you press the button and you spend all this money on explosives, we're able to do a forecast of the fragmentation, so the rock size. For those of you in the mining sort of engineering side, you'll know that if you try and put a piece of rock fragments that are too big down a crusher, you can actually break the teeth and actually damage the crusher and put production downtime into play. So what our offering is that you're using this drone data, you're modeling your pits, and you're actually able to do a forecast to know what the fragmentation is going to look like even before you blast. On the haul road side, we're looking at things like haul road widths, berm heights, all these things that have generally taken weeks to manually do and compute are now done in days using drones and AI. To give you a context of everything that we do, so again, a vast majority of our business is mining based, so we'll go all the way from the exploration phase of mining, looking at even construction, doing construction monitoring, looking at the geotechnical side of the business, the drill and blast, sort of the surveying side, really even when they're doing sort of the infrastructure and developing the mine, we're able to monitor and map that out and provide heat maps to help project managers look at that, and all the way into security and surveillance sector as well. These are a couple of the data outputs just to sort of clearly and visually show what we're doing. Oh, I've got 1 minute, so I missed out. And just to show that there's 1 minute. And just to give you a quick highlight, traffic light system, red, green, yellow. And that's pretty much what we show to customers. We continue to be growth mindset focused, looking at acquisition opportunities where they make sense, and look to continue on operational efficiencies. Thank you.
I didn't think I was that scary. But obviously I'm putting the wind up them. Now, when Brian came in, one of the things you noticed about Brian as a biotech entrepreneur is he discovered ResApp at the University of Queensland. Is Brian still in the room? Did you go? So he discovered ResApp at a Queensland university, and he went on to develop it into that multi-million-dollar success story that it became last year when Pfizer swooped. Now, this fella here, as he comes up and joins us, this is Dr. Michael Baker. He's on the same path. He's investigating technologies from world-class research institutions and universities. He's identifying and developing the best through his company, which is Arovella Therapeutics. So he's really passionate about creating life-changing medication for the betterment of mankind. And his lead product, which we're going to hear a lot about over the next 15 minutes, is fighting blood cancers. And they're also taking on the very big challenge of solid tumours. So please make him very welcome and see if it's something you'd like to invest in.
Great, thanks very much, Chrissy, and thanks very much to the organisers for putting the event on. Of course, big thank you to everybody for taking the time to listen in today. We're delighted to have you here. And so, yes, that's exactly what we're talking about, Arovella Therapeutics. For those of you that don't know us, our ticker is ALA, and we are a biotechnology company focused on the battle against cancer. I will be making forward-looking statements, so please do take note of the disclaimer. Now, I'd like to start with the highlights of the company, and what we're working on we term an invariant natural killer T-cell platform, which is a mouthful, and I'll unpack what that means in a moment. And for short, we call it iNKT cells. And we're using that to develop initially treatments for blood cancers, but as Chrissy just mentioned, also looking to tackle a range of solid tumours as we build up from behind. So our lead product is ALA-101. That's going after a very specific form of blood cancer, a leukemia or lymphoma that has something we call CD19 on the outside, and we're expected to take that into clinic in 2024. Now, Steve Clark did a lovely job explaining the cell therapy sector earlier, and he highlighted a lot of the key challenges. And so we believe that our iNKT cell platform solves a lot of those challenges, which is why we're so excited by it. Now, we've worked very hard to build an equally impressive team as the technologies by bringing in both board level and management level individuals across Australia and the US. We have built the company through very careful strategic acquisition of technologies from world-leading institutes like the Imperial College London, the MD Anderson Cancer Centre, and we'll continue to do that as we look to grow, bringing in new things that align with our focus areas. We are the only company in Australia working on an invariant natural killer T-cell platform and one of a handful worldwide, so we do see that we're well positioned for growth. In terms of our financials, we're currently valued at around 40 to 45 million. As of the end of June, pro forma cash was just under 7.4 million, with the proceeds from an SPP that was completed early January. That does not include our R&D tax incentive funding, which we expect before November. We've got an excellent register with strong support from our largest shareholder, Merchant Group, but also a number of high net worths and also smaller institutions that have been very supportive of what we're doing. So we've had quite a good start to 2023, good start, I should say, seeing a pretty strong share price appreciation after we announced and presented data at a very well-known conference in the US called the American Association for Cancer Research, but clearly looking to grow the shareholder value as we move forward and take these products into clinic. Now, I won't go through this in great detail because Steve did a wonderful job of describing it earlier. Just to say, this is the typical cell therapy regime where we take the initial starting material from the patient. Then it gets genetically reprogrammed, so it will specifically tackle cancer. It gets grown and given back to the patient. And I'll explain why our technology, we believe, is better than this original, what I'd call almost generation one of the therapy. And again, not to go into great detail, but Steve did a great job explaining that for certain blood cancers, patients are now 10 years cancer-free. So we are using the word cure and cancer in the same sentence. The revenue for each of the first two products is doing quite well, and we're expecting this to be a greater than $60 billion sector before 2030. So as I said, what I'd like to talk about is why our platform actually addresses some of the challenges that have hampered the sector. And just to make it clear, the major challenges are because the therapy needs to come initially from every single patient, every dose needs to be made bespoke. That's very, very difficult from a supply chain perspective, and of course, very expensive. So the dose per patient is about $500,000 US. Also, the starting material is compromised because the patients have seen cancer, also likely chemotherapy or other types of therapies. And not all treatment centers will actually be able to undertake this process. So a lot of eligible patients actually don't get the therapies. In addition, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks for the therapies to actually be manufactured. So people die while they're being manufactured. They don't actually make it to take the therapy. And of course, because you're making it every single time, there's also the risk of a manufacturing run failure. So as I said, we believe that specifically our iNKT cell platform addresses these challenges, but also offers the potential for improved activity. So just to introduce iNKT cells, this is a nice cartoon picture of some of the immune cells that are in our bodies, and we allude to these as the soldiers of our immune system that fight infection or target particular forms of cancer already. But what we're most interested in, obviously, is the iNKT cells, noting that T cells have been most well studied, and that's where all of the 6 approved products derive from. But natural killer cells are another type of therapy that's also been particularly attractive in this sector. So why iNKT cells? Well, they are the front line of the human immune system. So they're very rapidly activated to fight infection and cancers. They actually bridge the two halves, the slow-acting and the fast-acting aspects of our immune system. They contain both T cell and natural killer cell killing mechanisms. And as I said, they naturally target certain types of cancers and actually trigger their destruction already. They've got a very strong safety profile. We can give them from a healthy person to a patient, which is in contrast to the original therapies. And they have multiple anti-cancer properties, unlike some of the other immune cells, where they actually destroy other immune cells that will promote tumor growth. And they also infiltrate the tumors themselves and then send out signals to the other immune cells to come and get involved in the destruction of the tumor cells. Now, we also believe that the iNKT cell space itself is untapped. And so when we saw the sector start off, really, I think it was set on fire in 2018 after two multi-billion-dollar acquisitions, we saw an absolute flurry of T-cell companies and natural killer cell companies. And this is a snapshot of those companies in the sector. And contrast this with the iNKT cell space, which is where we play. And there's only a handful of companies worldwide working on this type of technology. Now, in terms of how it actually looks from a manufacturing perspective, so we have two major changes. One is we collect the blood from a healthy donor, a fully functional immune system. We isolate their iNKT cells from that blood. We genetically reprogram them so they have the CAR or the laser-guided missile that will find the cancer cells. They get grown up into the billions before being put into small vials, stored in a freezer, and then when a patient is eligible for that therapy, it'll be pulled out of the freezer and it can be administered. So we believe this has a number of advantages. We have a healthier starting material. It's scalable because we can create multiple doses per batch. People get access to the treatment a lot faster. And of course, it eliminates the risk of any manufacturing run failure because it's sitting in the freezer. Now, I would like to just quickly go through some of the data of why we're so excited by this platform. And these are mouse studies that must be completed before taking these types of therapies into clinic. So what we're looking at here is a series of mice. Anywhere you can see the red, green, blue, yellow color, that's the tumor cells inside of the animals. We can image them. And so what we're looking at here is we've given them a range of different treatments and we're looking after 3 days. So the first is salt water. The second is a T cell with no laser targeting. iNKT cells also with no targeting. CAR T targeting, CD19 targeting T cells. So these are equivalent of what's approved and on market. And then our therapy in the last column. And so I think it's quite clear after 3 days, you can see all of the animals in the control groups, as we call them. There's still quite a lot of cancer cells persisting, but very clearly in our case, the animals have eradicated the bulk of the tumor cells present. So we know they're very quickly activated, but what we're probably more interested in is how long do the animals actually last after they've taken these types of therapies, because that's what we'd like to recapitulate in humans. So this is a survival curve where 100% of the animals alive would have the line up the top. 0% is if the animals have all died, and down the bottom, we're looking at out to 90 days. So in all the control groups here, we can see the animals have died between 40 to 60 days. The CAR T, so the original type of therapy, we see that it's really good data. 60% of the animals are actually alive at 90 days, which is wonderful. And as I said, this type of data led to their approval by the FDA. But what we see for the iNKT cells is it's about 90 to 95% of the animals are alive. So we see that there's this improved opportunity for activity as well. Now, one other interesting finding that came out of these studies was looking at 4 mice that were actually treated with our therapy. At the earlier time, you can see they all looked like they were free from cancer cells in their body. And between 20 to 30 days, the cancer cells actually came back. And you can see it in all of them, actually. It was localized to the brain. Now, the natural response here is, okay, the animals will die, and our curve that I showed previously won't look as good. Instead, what happened was the animals actually underwent what we termed a spontaneous secondary remission. So they were able to eradicate the cancer a second time. Now, this is quite an exciting finding, and we're exploring this further, but it suggests that the cells can persist long enough to take care of the cancer a second time, also that they cross what we call the blood-brain barrier, and that they have an impact on a more solid tumor like a cancer type. So one thing we're also working on is taking ELA-101 and combining this with Immugene's onCARlytics platform. So they actually have ELA-101, as I've just described, it's a CD19 targeting therapy, and we're planning to use that off the shelf. CF33, or the onCARlytics platform, actually infects tumor cells and labels them with CD19, which our cells will recognize. So we think this could be a wonderful combination therapy. And let me just show you how it might work. We'd inject a human with the oncolytic virus. It would go in, infect the cells before then labeling the cells that aren't killed with CD19 on their surface. And then what we're able to do is actually inject our iNKT cells. They'll come in, recognize the CD19 on the surface of the solid tumor cells, and then trigger their destruction. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, iNKT cells also influence the tumor microenvironment. They recruit other components of the immune system. So we expect a multi-pronged approach to killing the cancer cells. And for this program, we're expecting in vivo or animal data this half, which is quite exciting. So all in all, we've got a range of shots on goal. We've got ELA-101, we're treating for blood cancers, the onCARlytics platform plus ELA-101, which opens up shots on goal for a range of solid tumors, and 2 programs I haven't talked about today, but another targeting CAR or laser-guided missile to target multiple myeloma and other solid tumours. And we've just have an option agreement for another cytokine technology from the University of North Carolina, which will strengthen the whole platform across a range of solid tumours. So we've got quite a busy 12 to 18 months planned. The most important milestone is for us to take ALA-101 into clinical trials next year. And that, as I said, will be against a range of blood cancers that produce the target CD19. We're also continuing to assess novel technologies that we'd like to bring into the business to expand the use of the platform against more cancers like solid tumours. But over the next 6 months, we've got quite a busy level of activity manufacturing the product, which we expect to yield a number of important milestones that we will announce before ultimately manufacturing the product in the first half next year, and then doing the necessary regulatory submissions so that we can take that product into clinic. As I said, the Imugene and ALA-101 data we're expecting to be presented before the end of this year. And as I said, we're looking to analyze additional technologies to add to the platform. And then first half of next year, we'll generate additional proof of concept data for those studies as well. So I alluded to it, but we've got an exceptional team with a range of individuals based in Australia and based in the US. And what's important is we've got a significant amount of experience across drug development, right the way through from research and development through to development of drugs themselves, but also commercial activity in terms of the form of a fair bit of corporate transactions, which is great to have. As we look to build the company into clinic, we expect that we're having nice conversations with some pretty important players in the cell therapy sector. So, and just to that point, we are preclinical, and that's fine by us. But what we've noticed over the last 2 to 3 years is in this particular space, the number of transactions that occur in early phase 1 or at the preclinical stages, whether it be an acquisition or license agreements, is still relatively strong, given that the biotechnology sector has had a pretty tough 24 months. So what we can see is this, for example, a more recent transaction in May this year, a phase 1B company, so first trials in humans. The upfront fee for a license agreement was 245 million US. Again, thinking about Arovella's market cap at 45 million Australian, it dwarfs that. And we've seen a series of those types of deals across both phase 1 and preclinical companies. So in summary, we are developing an off-the-shelf iNKT cell therapy platform. We're we're the only one in Australia and one of a handful worldwide. We do that because we know the iNKT cells have multiple properties that will be beneficial. It offers improved manufacturing and logistics abilities, which we think will drive down the price and provide a lot more access to these types of therapies. Our lead product we're expecting to take into clinic in 2024. We do have an expanding pipeline, which we think is very important in terms of strategic partnerships. And for all these reasons, we do think that we're very well positioned for growth and looking forward to continuing to grow our shareholder value. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you all again very much for your attention.
Well done. Thank you so much. Right. We heard from RocketDNA a little bit earlier on. Now, in a short period of time, I was thinking of those drones because they've gone from, has anyone ever flown a drone for work or anything at all? They can be really ungainly. We used to have a backpack and we'd carry all this gear. Now we can launch them from our hands, used all over the place. And I use them a lot. One of my other jobs is working with a travel TV show. So we travel around the world and we launch drones all over the place. We've lost a couple of drones over the years, mainly because they fly out of sight and we can't see them. When we lose contact with them and they're on snow and it might be a white drone and they're cactus, they are gone. And that can be quite expensive. And it also limits what you can do with the drones. So this fella here, Yoav, I had the good fortune of interviewing you 2-3 months ago. 2 months ago. Yeah. So I do another investing show called On the Bid. And I had the good fortune of interviewing himself as the person who's behind this amazing tech that's being put into drones, which removes the need for a line of sight. And that is absolutely life-changing for those of us that use us in applications like we've seen earlier on today. So without any further ado, would you please put your hands together for this gentleman? We're talking to Yoav, and he's come all the way from Israel to address all of you today. So please make him super special. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Aurel, for the warm introduction. Thank you everyone for listening here today. I'll start with some few questions. I'll try to be stationary. 2 days ago, I was moving over the stage and the camera didn't catch it, so I'll try to stay here. Some quick question. How many of you are using the internet on an hourly basis? I'll return on the same joke I made 2 days ago. probably those who didn't raise their hand either didn't listen to the question or wasn't aware of what I was saying. So basically all of us are using it on an hourly basis. And another question, how many of you using vehicles to commute or to move between places? Just standard vehicle? Yeah, you just don't. Yeah, probably all of us, right? So what I wanted to introduce you today is I'm going to talk about Elsight and our company, but I also want to talk about the revolution that is currently happening in all these states of what we're doing, like Aurel mentioned, beyond visual line of sight, and how it will affect us as a human being on Earth or a society, or how is everything affected. So I took this quote from Goldman Sachs, which I think represents very good, and maybe it will connect to the question I asked in the beginning. It represents really good the states of where this industry is currently stated in, or the status of the industry, of showing that just like the internet that today everyone are using, and the GPS that also most of us are using from the palm of our hands in our iPhones or mobile phones, it's just what happened is that starting in military and defense application, and then migrate into more of a civilian consumer application. And that's exactly the phase that we're seeing at the moment happening in the drone, or in general in the uncrewed industry, unmanned industry, that started in the defense military application. We heard about it a lot in the news today in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, but also started to migrate into more of a civilian application and other type of usage of those platforms, or I'll just mention one of them, and I'll give you a few examples of what we do or how we help those companies to grow their businesses. One point that is, or before I'm going to that, just to show you some numbers from some market analysis. Those are two different market analyses that are showing that you see this movement from the industry, the defense and military industry, more towards the logistics, enterprise, which include agriculture, inspection, real estate, mining, mapping, surveying, you name it. A little bit more into the public safety, logistics, and sometime in the future, maybe even the advanced air mobility or the air taxis. So we see that there is a rapid growth in the industry, and it's moving more towards more of a civilian application, exactly what I tried to share before when I shared the Goldman Sachs quote. Elsight is not a drone company. That's something that's important to say. We're not drone manufacturer. We're not service provider, unlike RocketDNA that present here very well before, and we are calling for the same industry and working on the same challenges. We are providing the sticks and shovels for this industry to grow to their full potential. What we're doing is we're providing the most reliable communication that they have. So like Aurel said, they won't lose communication between the operator and the platform can be in the air, can be on the ground, can be in the ocean. Whatever the platform is, you want to remain connected to the platform, because I guess it will be very scary to you to vision a drone flying in the air that nobody controls it because it's lost the communication. So the communication element of those systems is a critical part or critical components of those systems, and that's what we're providing them. And the good thing is, here it's only in the drone space, but the good thing is that our product is one size fits all. It's a combination of hardware, software, and cloud infrastructure service that provide those systems to be able to communicate, whether it's from defense and military application, enterprise, consumer, even though we're not very exposed to this market, public safety, logistics, last mile logistics, and middle mile, which is our biggest market today. I'll talk about it in a second, and the passenger in the future. Some highlights about Elsight and what we do. So it's all the technology that I mentioned and will mention, and I'm not going too deep into the technology. You are very welcome to stop by, and I will be happy to go as deep as you want into what exactly we're doing in the communication and how we create this magic. But one of our strengths is that all the technology was developed in-house. We're based out of Israel. Everything was developed in-house, including the hardware and the software, which provide us the flexibility or the opportunity to continue and develop the product, or to continue and develop a portfolio of products that will enable this industry and to provide more tools to this industry to grow to its full potential. Second, we were looking for a market that is a substantial nascent market, but have a rapid growth happening as we speak, because when we looked at the problem and say what we want to do and how we are going to achieve it, we said from the beginning that we are going to be the #1 in this industry. And I'll show you in 2 slides, you'll see that we're taking a very big market share of this, what's called beyond visual line of sight, BVLOS, drone industry, or robotics industry in general. So becoming an industry standard is a core strength for any player in any market to have, and we are in the right direction to get there. Third is product validation. It's very important for any tech company to have what we call in the tech ecosystem product market fit, making sure that the customer wants your product, they're willing to pay for it, and basically we're looking for this aha moment that customer will say, where have you guys been all this time? I was looking for this solution. That's what we're looking for when we're saying product market fit, which we have a great market fit at the moment in this market after looking for many market and analyzing many market. Today we are part of the biggest project that is happening in this industry. Our biggest customer is Walmart, the giant retail from the US, believe it or not, doing deliveries with drones for consumers, already deployed in 6 different states in the US, all based on our infrastructure, and that's just one example of our customers, and I'll give you some more example in the next slide. And last but not least, maybe the most important thing is the growth engines or the multiple growth engines that we create. Since we're sitting in the heart of those systems and all the data is going through our systems, including the telemetry, the control, the payload, which means the video or the radars or the LiDARs or whatever the payloads is, we are sitting in a very interesting junction that see all the challenges and pains that both the end customer have, but also the operator and the OEM, the drone manufacturer. And that's, again, connect us to the first point that I mentioned, provide us the opportunity to develop technological solution that will solve those pains. And later in the presentation, I'll give you a great example of something we did there. So how do I show confidence that we have a big market share or the biggest market share, like I said, in this industry? This is how the partners map look like when we just launched, 5 months after we launched the product in January 2021, end of December 2020, beginning of January 2021, that was the launch day. As you see, just design partners, that was in the middle of COVID. Like I said, we're based in Israel, so we started with design partners mainly in Israel. Some of them are big companies like IAI, which is the second largest defense contractor in Israel. Some of them are small startup or medium-sized startup like Aerobotics, which I'll give example of what they are doing. But this is how they started, which is very limited market share, as you can see. But today, 2 years later, this is how the map look like in terms of onboarding new customer. And those are customers. Someone asked me before, okay, those are probably the prospects, or this is the total addressable market. Those are paying customers, and I'll share in a second the business model and everything. But all the names you see there are paying customers that pay to use Elsight services and Elsight product, which shows a great product validation and great product market fit, like I said before. And that's become the biggest, or we become by that the biggest market share in terms of deployments and in terms of operation that we're doing on a daily basis, actually on a minute basis, globally in the world. On different type of application, by the way. If I mentioned before, so I can give you here example for last mile logistics, defense, public safety, agriculture, inspection for infrastructure, and the list goes on and on. A little bit about how it's look like in the real life. It sounds like something extremely futuristic that sometimes maybe will happen in the future. If I was standing here 140 years ago, I told it to someone earlier today, 140 years ago, and said that those horses on the streets doesn't make sense, and vehicles just started to drive the streets, and people said, well, this is noisy, maybe doing some pollution, might create a lot of accidents, and today you see only one horse. Someone tell me there is one horse in Melbourne streets today. The rest are cars. Same is happening here as we speak, and this is from Walmart corporate side. What you see here, that's from last year in Walmart corporate side, declaring that they are going to achieve 4 million household sales within 2022. They even overachieve it. They serve more than that, like I said. They today deployed in more than 6 states. And that's all based on our infrastructure, our solution. Today, they're even going to expand it. Their plan for this year is to even expand it to 30 million households, which means that if you're sitting in your house, logging into the their mobile application, ordering the diaper that you ran out of for the baby, they're committed for 20 minutes delivery, and it costs you $3.99. That's the price, and that's the commitment. It's happening as we speak. It's not something that is going to happen in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. That's happening today in 6 different states in the US. And that's just one example of this industry and what it's capable of. Another good example is MissionGo, another customer of ours. They are a service provider and drone manufacturer in the US, providing services for the Florida Power Lines company. They signed a contract for $50 million for inspection for their power lines. Aerobotics that I mentioned before just signed a contract with the UAE government, both for Dubai and Abu Dhabi, to provide them with public safety situational awareness and footage from the streets and what's going on to be able to monitor it. And that's only 3 examples that I gave from 3 different types of industries, 3 different regions, and how it's evolved. And again, the list is much bigger than that. I'll skip that because of time constraints. Sorry about that. Just a little bit about the revenue model. So like I said before, we are a combination of hardware and software solution. Now the hardware is the one-time fee that our customer pay for any drone that they're deploying in the street. They have the Hello hardware, that's the name of the product, sits inside the product, inside their drone. And then they must be connected to our cloud services to be able to communicate what I said before over long distances. And this is the recurrent the recurrent revenue element, that we have in our model, which every unit that is sold here will translate into recurrent revenue, and that's the long tail of the sale. Another part, which is the interesting part that I mentioned before, it's what shows that we track customer challenge or customer pain and how we translate it into opportunity for us, which the data usage. The data usage basically means that we are also reselling them the connectivity from the Telstra and Optus of the world. We saw that it's extremely hard for them to contract with those companies, so we went out and did the contract for them, and now we providing them with an end-to-end solution to have also the connectivity as part of our package, and that represents a very interesting revenue opportunity for us, not only moving forward, but also today, recurrent monthly recurrent revenue. That's how the last 5 consecutive quarters look like in terms of growth. The orange piece is the one-time, the blue one is the recurrent. As you can see, the orange ones are translate into blue. Like I said before, because of the model, this is how the model works, and this is how we see the growth is continuing over time and will bring us into a very good place in terms of the business. And we feel at the moment the excitement inside a company, both from the engineering side and the commercial side, is that see those numbers continuing to grow and see companies continue to use our devices. That's really nice to see. That's a 2-minute video. I will end with that. A 2-minute video of our customers speaking about us instead of me talking about it.
My name is John Vernon. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for DroneUp.
My name is Justin Steinke. I'm the Senior Vice President of Commercial Business at Sprite.
My name is Ryan Henderson, and I'm the Director of Flight Operations here at MissionGo.
The biggest problem that the Halo solved was that we had a cost-effective solution for reliable connectivity.
We're able to have connectivity in real time, all the time, without any question of failure with that link.
Our selection of the Halo was really because it was a robust and mature solution that allowed us to feel confident that putting all this stuff together would work.
I would definitely recommend the Halo to anybody who is looking for a solution where connectivity is absolutely important, not only to the mission and operation at hand, but to support the safety and the safety culture that should be behind every uncrewed aviation activity.
I would say the most important thing would be partner with Elsight early, bring them into the equation, make sure that they know what you're trying to accomplish, and they will help you achieve it.
So I'll steal another 5 seconds, or it'll don't kill me about it. I want to say, to end with saying that if any of you believe that this industry will grow, and like I said, if the internet is the virtual infrastructure of the world, that will become the physical infrastructure of the world. And if any of you believe that this is going to happen, like people didn't believe 130 years ago that automotive are going to drive the street. So I think Elsight provided great access to be part of this industry and to have access not only for a single company, but for the entire industry. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Yoav. Since you did come the furthest to be here, I will forgive you your 25 seconds. That's okay. Very interesting, isn't it? Hey, you know what I should have done actually when I was thinking about it? I needed some corporate investment in my son's basketball team that's going to America. So anyone that's more than 1 minute over now, I'm going to find you and I'm going to put that money into the kids' team. How's that? That'll be a good one. We're going to give you an opportunity now to make some money using technology to help people manage their money. Nicholas Smedley, would you like to come back up and join us, sir? Where are you hiding? Down that side. You're coming from the other side of me today. So Nicholas has actually got 2 hats on for this conference. He wowed us with his first opportunity. Let's see how you go with the stairs there. Let's see how he goes with the second one. So he's here now in his role as chairman for India-based Findi. That's an ASX-listed fintech company, 14 years experience. Now cop this, they're growing at more than 50% per annum. Every day, 2.7 million people go through their channels. And at the moment, 6% of all cash in India goes through their channels. That's 6% today. If they're growing at 50%, we know how big India is. How big is this opportunity? Please make Nicholas very welcome.
Thank you very much for that introduction. It gives me great pleasure to be here as non-executive chair of Findi Group to tell you a little bit about the exciting opportunity that we've been delivering now for a number of years. By way of background, just some high levels, we process more than 1 billion transactions per annum. That averages out, as was just mentioned, 2.7 million people per day are using our services on both our digital and physical ATM network. We provide bespoke payment solutions in the world's largest developing market. The company is at the centre of India's digital transformation, where there is a deep demand for both banking without banks, which we provide, payments without cards, which we facilitate, and fast and reliable transactions from any locations, which our app and digital services provide. Just a couple of high levels. We've already given guidance out to the market. So this year, our year is a 31 March year end, 2024 for the numbers I'll be talking about. A little over $67 million in revenue is what we will do this year. Last year, I'll talk through how we exceeded those revenue forecasts that we put out. We'll do EBITDA a little bit below $24 million. Our current enterprise value, including, is just under $40 million. We have $40 million of cash on the balance sheet. We have gross debt of 60, which gives us $20 million of net debt to derive at 40 million enterprise value. But most importantly, 1.7 times is our EBITDA multiple to EV. As said, we have ATM solutions for which we manage more than 20,000 ATMs across India. 8,000 of those we own ourselves. We're the largest provider of ATM managed services and the cheapest provider of those services in India. We then also have 10,000 merchants and growing rapidly for our digital Findi Pay business. The month just complete, or 2 months ago, we acquired a little over 560 new merchants. The month just completed, we acquired 1,000 merchants. So they're actually not in the 10,000 number that I talk about. Our target for the end of this financial year is to have more than 30,000 merchants in our network, which is a great growth trajectory that we're going on. A couple of key stats. Cash in circulation in India has more than doubled in the last few years. It's currently growing at 16% compound annual growth. There's 34 trillion rupees in circulation, which is approximately 620 billion. As mentioned, more than 6% of that cash goes through our systems on an annual basis. So large revenue sources through our ATMs, and it's a 1.4 billion plus population market, of which that is now the largest population in the world. There is 350 million people in India that currently don't have a bank account or are underbanked. That is who we are targeting with our digital services as well as ATM solutions. And I'll just continue on now. As mentioned, we are growing exceptionally quickly. Just in 2022, we delivered revenues of $44 million and EBITDA of $5.8 million. That was followed through last year, fully audited, first year of ownership, 100% of this business. We only acquired 100% in February 2022. So for the first full year of ownership, we grew revenue by another $10 million, but most importantly, our EBITDA grew to $16.4 million. And as already mentioned, we have a $67 million forecast and a $24 million EBITDA, as well as a $5 million bottom line. And I can also share with you that in the first quarter that's just closed, we did free cash flow in excess of $5 million for the quarter. So a very strong business as we go through. Over the coming years, we've already applied for a white label ATM license to enable us to deploy our own ATMs moving forward, which enables us to capture those 2.7 million people that use our ATMs and digital payment services every day into our own ecosystem. And we all have a very low cost of customer acquisition as a result. As I've mentioned, we have a very robust market opportunity in front of us, the largest population country in the world. We're in every state in India, so we have operations in all 30 states and territories. So we are pan-India, which gives us great efficiencies as we continue to roll out more merchant locations and ATM locations. We have a clearly defined growth strategy. As I mentioned, our target is to have more than 30,000 merchants by the end of this financial year. So that's by March 31, 2024. We currently manage 20,000 ATMs. Our target is for that number over the next 12 months to grow to in excess of 30,000 ATMs. Currently in our deal pipeline for new business, we have 7,500 ATMs that we'll be tendering for over the next 18 months. To give you a little insight in terms of penetration rates of ATMs in India, there's only approximately 17 ATMs per 100,000 people of population. To put that into context, both Australia and China, for argument's sake, have in excess of 100 ATMs per 100,000. The Reserve Bank of India would like that number over the next 5 years to be closer to 50. So we see ourselves as being able to drive a lot of that growth and rollout strategy ourselves. Most importantly, with any new contract that we do win, the last contract that we won was the Central Bank of India, which we have announced to the market 12 months ago. That was the first ATM contract in the history of India that has a minimum guarantee per month of revenue. So my revenue is underwritten by Central Bank of India every month that that ATM is deployed on a 5-year contract with two-year extensions in there. And to give you an example, one of our first contracts that we got in 2006 was Punjab National Bank. That was a 6-year contract with a 3-year extension. We sit here today, we still have that contract and it's been continually extended. So very sticky and very good customer risk profile because they are major state-owned and private banks. So very good to have there. We have a fantastic management team over in India. There's 550 staff in operations across a number of offices with head office in Delhi. And then we have back office operations in Pune with about 230 staff there. We have a medium-term re-rate. We rebranded the business Findi only in September last year after we had acquired 100% of the operations and ahead of the full year financials, audited financials that came out. We've just started marketing and IR strategy in this quarter just gone. So Indian management team was out last month. This presentation that you can look at in your own time. It's about 16 times EV to EBITDA is the Indian comparable multiple. And as I said earlier, we're trading at 1.7 times. So our job as a board and management team is to get the market understanding who Findi is, what the opportunity is, and get us trading closer to our listed Indian comparable companies. So it's a great opportunity to get exposure to Indian fintech via Australia. A couple of stats for you in cash in India. The one thing I always like to say is that cash is going nowhere. That was one of the biggest elements that we needed to get our head around while we were in India before we did the acquisition of to take us to 100%. cash as a percentage of GDP for payments in India has gone from a little over 6% 5 years ago to a smidge over 12% as we stand at the moment. So more than a doubling, not only in absolute terms, but also as a percentage of total GDP. Our market share in the market has gone from 7% last year to 10%. Our aspiration is to be closer to 20% of the market over the next 3 years. And I'll give you another very interesting stat. Online e-commerce. In Australia, we all know we pull the credit card out, we order something on eBay, and then a few days later it arrives at home. In India, it is a completely different way of doing business. That you put an order online from an eBay or an Amazon or another service provider, that good is delivered to your door at their cost, and then 90% of transactions are completed by cash on delivery. So you're not prepaying for the product, you're not giving your credit card details, you're actually only paying once it's there. So that just tells you how entrenched cash is the Indian economy. And as said, cash in circulation over there is continuing to grow, and as a percentage of GDP and payments continuing to grow too. As said, we have diversified operations across both physical ATM network and digital, which is our Findi Pay solution. So the Findi Pay solution is a digital wallet and an app, but it is also the last mile solution for an economy that is largely still entrenched in cash. So as we said, there are 350 million people that don't have a bank account at the moment out of the 1.4 billion plus population. Our Findi Pay merchants enable those individuals to come and do a digital transaction, but settle and facilitate that cash. So they'll come into our store, our merchant, which is, for better of expression, like a 7-Eleven, but a little not quite as corporatized. They come in, they provide cash. That merchant will facilitate a bus ticket, an e-commerce transaction, a bill payment for them. Take that cash transaction on behalf of that end customer. So the merchant is the one facilitating the transaction, but we have that last mile solution for the 350 million people in the population that don't even have bank accounts. And there's another 300 million people that don't actually have digital iPhone level smartphone technology. So we are that last mile solution for them. And that is growing. As I said, we're acquiring 1,000 merchants a month at the moment with an ambition of having more than 30,000 by the end of the month. End of the financial year, and over the next 3 years, our target is to have more than 100,000 merchants in that network across India. As I mentioned earlier as well, some key stats: 1.5 trillion rupees goes through our ATM network every year. That's approximately $28 billion goes through our ATMs with more than 1 billion transactions, or 2.7 million per day, plus our digital transactions, and that's across 20,000 ATMs. So scary stats. Every 2 days, everyone in Melbourne across India, by comparison, touches our product. Every 10 days, more people than are in Australia use our product. So it just shows the size and scale that we have. I'll just focus on some financials as we spoke about. Free cash for us is fantastic. We'll do more than $20 million in free cash flow this year. As said, we exceeded budget for the first quarter. We did more than $5 million of free cash in quarter one alone, which is our weakest quarter of the year. FY23, we delivered 54 million. We'll be increasing to in excess of 67 million. We gave guidance last year. We exceeded that guidance by 35%. Our CFO, that's in the business for over 10 years, has not missed a budget. That's why we are very confident with the numbers that we put forward. EBITDA last year, as I mentioned, was $16 million, or just under 17, and we'll deliver more than $23 million in EBITDA this year. So very strong earnings growth, growing at more than 40% compound annual over the last few years. And we have a number of inorganic acquisitions across our portfolio and opportunities for us to help grow that number further. And just to be clear, those numbers are just our existing portfolio, just our existing ATMs deployed, our existing merchants. Anything we're doing in excess of that and inorganic growth that we have or new contract wins will be in addition to these numbers. We have a great board led by myself as non-executive chair, Simon Viterlo and Jason Titman in Australia as non-executive directors. Monish Kumar, ex-Citibank, been in the business since inception, 16 years. Deepak Verma from one of the largest telecommunications companies, Airtel, came into the business a little over 10 years ago. I now just leave you with a couple of key messages. We have great leverage to deeply capitalise on the existing network that we have, a strong pipeline of opportunities for new ATM contract wins, as well as increased digital payments. We're looking to unlock the value of our customer network with our white label license application, which is done. We've introduced a dividend policy of 30% after tax earnings, and we're the only Australian listed company to provide direct access to the emerging Indian financial markets. So thank you very much for your time, and hopefully you can add us to your watch list. Thank you.
You're good. You're very, very good. Right, one more before lunch, everyone. Stay seated. This one's an important one too. We're exploring for investment opportunities in the resources industry, and a couple of things for you to think about in relation to this company up on stage. One, the world needs to energy transition fairly rapidly. Two, the world needs mining to achieve that. Three, mining needs to be done better. And four, there is a huge pressure from governments and investors, people like us, and rightly so, on mining to focus on ESG, and that is where these guys come in. K2fly assists mining companies to manage their ESG disclosures confidently. So this is their CEO, Nicholas Pollock, and I asked Nicholas, how many companies, Nicholas, actually need what it is that you provide? And he just went, all of them. So let's find out why. Would you please make him welcome?
Thanks a lot, and it's my pleasure to be here to talk to you about K2fly today. It's a very exciting story with a few years of history behind it now, so we can demonstrate a very good investment proposition as our company continues to grow and on our path to operating cash flow break even. So bear with me while I get through the usual stuff and start to give you an overview. So K2fly is a very purpose-driven organisation. We are pioneers in something that we're calling resource governance. So first of all, we're a software business, we're not a consulting business. We derive our revenues predominantly through recurring software licenses, and I'll talk about that a bit more later and show you the numbers to do with that. But resource governance is an increasingly important space as the world shifts to net zero and needing more mining in order to do that. But also this thing called radical transparency, and that's been driven by people such as yourselves who are obviously interested in profit, but also interested in doing the right thing in terms of wanting the companies that you're investing in to be doing the right things in the communities in which they operate. It all sounds, it might sound very grand and grandiose to a certain extent, but it's really, really important. And the main thing that you need to understand is that the biggest driver of this change in these behaviours of these organisations is actually coming from finance. So the finance organisations that are funding these companies, and particularly these mining organisations, are absolutely making sure that they adhere to the right regulations, and that's regulatory, but also what company and civil standards demand. So if you think about what happened with Rio Tinto last year, or 2 years ago, they didn't actually break a law. Right? They didn't break a law, but they crossed a line that the community said that's not good enough. So there's this blending going on that I'll talk about too. So who are we talking to? We're talking to board members and, it's noisy this, isn't it? Board members and executives in these major mining companies. I'll talk about it in the next slide in terms of our customer base. But this is a survey of the biggest mining companies by the biggest sort of consultants in the world. And in terms of what keeps CEOs and board members up at night, and there's an overwhelming preponderance here of environmental social governance, license to operate, which is key. So there's there's license to operate, which is your foundational access to these properties in order to mine them and develop them. But then there's your social license to operate. So you might have the tenement or the access to the land, but do you have the community support in which to do that? And given the scale of mining that we require going forward, in order to make the energy transition, you need that social license, you need the community behind you, you need your financiers behind you, you need your regulators behind you, you need all of that. And that's what we help these organisations with through through operational software that drives their ESG performance, but also importantly, how they disclose that to the market. Now, I talked about, the grandiose nature of what we're looking to achieve here, and we are passionate about this subject. Most of the people in our organisation have spent many, many years in the mining industry, and we're firm believers in the mining industry and the importance of the mining industry. But we also believe passionately that the mining industry can do a better job of talking about itself and working with communities. So do these organisations, by the way. So, as I said, in terms of who's buying this, well, 7 of the top 10 mining companies in the world are using our solutions now. We have 10 solutions, as you can see along the bottom ribbon there. Not all of those companies use all those solutions. That is the addressable market that we are talking about, but we have contracts with all those companies that you can see, very highly represented in the majors. So this is what we're talking about with K2fly is not just an Australian company, it's very much a global company. 40% of our revenues are coming from outside of Australia. That is 20% from the US market and 20% from Europe, Middle East and Africa. So you can see a global issue that we're addressing with global multi-commodity, multi-site miners taking this up. So that creates a massive white space for us to move into. Really, really well represented, obviously, in the iron ores, gold sectors, but also across the emerging sectors of energy transition. Important point here. In order for the world to make the energy transition, which we all believe in, we need about 300 new mines. We haven't been doing that a lot lately. There's been a lot of mines shifting ownership and things like that. In order for those 300 mines to get started to deliver the critical minerals in order to build electric vehicles, to build batteries, to build wind turbines, you need a lot of these mines to be opening and rapidly. So they can't do that without these approvals and without the buy-in of their investors and the communities in which they operate. So that's a tremendous opportunity for us. Outside of that, there's also a lot of other land use where we can move into. So we've been very focused on the mining industry, as you can see, but we have a number of opportunities in the utilities business, in large ag, oil and gas, that we can grow our base in. So I just want to come back to why it is that people use us and what's fundamentally changing in the world today in order that's driving the business and driving those major companies towards us. So if you look at the way a mining company is valued traditionally, it's what inventory they have in the ground. So, tons and grade, prevailing price of the day generally provides the value of that, or the price or the value of that stock. Very basic mining economics, right? And what you're seeing there in terms of the pictures is a segment of our solutions that we provide to these companies. And a lot of them start very much on that left-hand side, how they disclose their inventories to the stock market, hence the value. So what we provide goes into their annual report. I saw the response of the involvement earlier on, but how many of you as investors have direct or indirect investment in mining companies? Most of you, right? Not surprising in an Australian investment audience. So most of you are probably aware of JORC, which is the way of, hands up if you've heard of JORC as the way. So that's essentially what this resource disclosure is doing, but not just for JORC. It does it for every stock market in the world and every standard, because they're slightly different in each. It's like a payroll bureau. In each jurisdiction, there's different versions of JORC, which sit under a global standard called CRISCO. So we manage that, and we manage the disclosure of that to the stock market. Really important. Goes in the annual report. Constitutes the value. So that is a value driver and a historical one. As you move to the right, you see all these other things. And they're really, really important for these organisations to get, and really, really important, increasingly important to get right, because they are, if you do them well, they're value accretive. If you do them badly, they're value destructors. And I mentioned the heritage situation a little earlier. Rio Tinto now use our heritage system. I stress post the event, not before the event. And I shouldn't make light of it, because that was a tragedy of cultural heritage destruction. And so again, as I said, they didn't actually break a law. So there's a merging now of hard law, which is what you see in the left-hand side, regulatory law, where you get pinged by ASIC or whatever the regulator is. As it moves across, it sort of gets into what we call soft law. The difference in terms of the effect on your stock price is the same. All right. So those things are blurring rapidly, and that's what we're managing and helping these organisations to address all of those things in what looks today like quite specific areas to do with mining and value creation or destruction. So a very important point, and that is just continuing to grow. We're in Melbourne, but you're probably reading the press about the new Cultural Heritage Act in Western Australia and the impacts that having, not just on the mining sector, but on ag providers and all sorts of people that are subject to that act, right? Again, we manage those land obligations, both regulatory and non-regulatory. So what makes it so important is protecting that license to operate and that social license to operate, keeping the faith of your investors that what you're disclosing to the market is trusted, and that is a big issue for the industry right now. We need all these mines, but there is a big lack of trust in the mining industry, not necessarily just from investors, but from communities as well, and they can't operate without that support. So the other thing is, and we're now seeing legislation come out from ASIC, which is anti-greenwashing legislation. So it means you can't just put releases and statements out there without having them backed up by proper facts that can be audited and proven that you are doing what you say you're doing. And that's where we come in, by providing those robust systems that are auditable and help you disclose properly. So that's a quick snapshot of the solutions that we provide in resource governance. So natural resource governance, how we manage land and how we disclose what we're doing on land. Mineral resource governance, how we disclose what we've got in the ground, which as investors, of course, you can't see, so you need to be able to trust, and then the technical assurance that sits underneath that. Quick, I'll get into the corporate now. So I've talked about the why. In terms of the business, very, very tightly held, in as much as about 66% of the share register is held by institutions. So that's institutional investors like First Sentia, like Tribeca, both of whom are investing in K2fly, not as a mining company, which they're investing out of their mining investment funds, but they're investing in a technology that supports those mining companies and helps them do a better job. So that's a really interesting synergy when you look at that, right? So these guys run massive funds investing in mining opportunities, but they're looking at this and saying that's really important for what we do. Wesfarmers are on there as well, and Regal. And then last year we took a 13% strategic investment from the world's largest privately owned mining software business, which happens to be an Australian business called Maptech, based out of South Australia originally, been around for 40 years. This company is worth a hell of a lot, but it's private, so I can't disclose what that is. But they're doing 120 million roughly of revenue per year. So they are a big organisation, a big gorilla in this market. Why did they invest in K2fly when they've been around for 40 years and they're much bigger than us? Because they recognise what we're doing and how important it is for the industry that they play in. They also recognise it would take them a lot of time, money and risk in order to build what we're doing. So they said, these guys are doing a fantastic job. Let's get on board with that. So we really welcome their involvement. The chairman sits on our board, Peter Johnson, and they're adding a lot of value. So a lot of the stock is held already, a small amount in retail. Annual recurring revenue, I'll come back to that in a little while. And then cash, plenty of cash. We've got 4.4 million in the bank and a $2 million facility, which we haven't called on yet. So we've got a very nice cash platform in order to proceed. So I'm just going to finish off with some results. As I said, this is a business that's been around for a little while now, so it's real, and we have, I guess, a history. We finished up the year really strongly. Our 3-year compound annual growth rate is about 45%. As I said, we're winning. What we do, our strategy is land and expand. We land our first solution in these major clients, and then we start to build out from there. And again, we're selling to the corporate buyers here, so a lot of what we do goes across the organisation from day one, which is a really rapid way of getting sites on board that we can expand into. So annual recurring revenue is a key part of our metrics. So that's the top left-hand side there. So you can see constant growth there, 25% growth over the year in that recurring revenue. So that out of revenues of, I think in FY23, they ended up at sort of $12 million. You got 7.5 of that million rolling over to the next year at least. And then total contract value rises and falls on where we are in terms of delivering projects. That's a little out of date now because we've obviously signed business that we've announced in this quarter already with Roy Hill. Let's took our ground disturbance solution in the Pilbara. So that total contract value will be sort of closer to 19 plus million back up where it goes. So that constantly depletes every month as you're invoicing. So that's a trigger. But the one that you can rely on is that rolling over that 7.5 mil Nice growth that you can see in all of those numbers over the years. And now that we've delivered on a lot of our products, we can actually really scale that. The other key thing for investors such as yourself, which is a big thing at the moment, is the path to operating cash flow. So on the top right-hand side there, you can see the graph is getting smaller. And in fact, you know, if it wasn't for one late payment at the end of June, we might have been a lot closer to operating cash flow break-even, which is obviously a really important milestone in this business in order for us to grow. So with that, I'd just like to wrap up and talk about, clearly we have strong growth metrics, incredible industry dynamics behind us, both globally and also in the industry that we support, and really, really sticky recurring revenues within our client base, which is global tier ones. Thank you very much for it, and I'll let you get to lunch.
Thank you, Nicholas. Nice and strong taking us up. Coming up at 1:45, we're back in this room. We're fighting stroke damage, we're saving brains, we're saving lives as AC/DC metals. Why are they at a tech investment road?